regular scheduled Macedonia council meeting, and the hour is 7:31 or so. And I'm going to ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Mr. Bilkey.
Here.
Ms. Brandt.
Here.
Mr. Molnar.
Here.
Ms. Tully. Here. And Mr. Ventura.
Here.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to call on our city chaplain, which is Thomas O'Brien, and ask him to lead us in prayer and thereafter pledge allegiance.
With bowed heads, let us pray. Almighty God, as we look toward our Memorial Day festivities, let us remember that Memorial Day is the most solemn of all veteran holidays, a day that we set aside to remember those brave men and women who gave the ultimate sacrifice, their lives in exchange for our freedom. As we gather here this evening, we ask for your blessing, that America remain free and true to our Constitution. We pray for those who serve the people and guard the public welfare, that by thy blessing they may be enabled to discharge their duties honestly and well. Almighty God, we ask for thy blessing upon our flag, the emblem of our republic, and may it fly forever over free land. May the words, "In God we trust," ever live, and may the faith of our forefathers guide, protect, and sustain our citizens. We ask thee for thy blessing. Amen.
Amen.
And now please face the flag and join me in our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Chaplain, thank you again. Have a good evening. Thank you for coming out. You know, each and every meeting, our chaplain comes here and he leads us in prayer and pledge allegiance, and I thank you very much for taking the time to do that every week.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, the first item on the agenda would be the approval of our minutes of our last meeting, which I believe would be May 10th.
I make a motion to approve the minutes as submitted by the Clerk of Council for the May 10, 2018 regular meeting.
Second.
Do we have a motion second? Are there any questions as it relates to the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion's carried.
I'm going to make a motion here too. Acknowledgement of the receipt of the finance report dated April 30th, 2018.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion's carried. Okay, the first item then, or the next item is public comments.
We have none.
Mayor,
We have none?
We have none.
Okay.
didn't it put the presentation by the charter review?
Right.
No, it wasn't on.
Oh,
Well,
but it was on the tentative agenda.
Yes, ma'am.
So, and
We
it
were-
just didn't transfer over.
Yes.
So
Okay.
The next item, sir, is the presentation by the.
Well, then
charter.
we'll have the presentation of the Charter Commission, and we're excited about hearing about what the Charter Commission is recommending. We have Ryan Sweeney that's stepping forward. Hi, Ryan.
Hi. Thank you, Mayor, Council. First, I want to thank our representatives on this year's Charter Review Commission. We spent well over 10 meetings together putting together our recommendations here this evening. So thank you to Jessica Brandt, our council representative, Kathy Loya, who, by the way, if you have an opportunity to read the minutes from our meetings, the minutes are absolutely outstanding and really paint a clear picture for all the work that we put in during this time. Mr. Don Kukta, Mr. Steve Donaldson, Mr. Shane Barker, and Mr. Joe Biber as well. So thanks to everyone on the review commission here. So the first thing I want to do is just kind of give an outline of what we as a review commission based most of our decision making on with regards to the recommendations here this evening. So the very first piece that we discussed was what's in the best interest of the citizens or the residents of Macedonia. We also felt that it was important to look to increase the executive powers of the mayor as it relates to hiring and removal of employees here within the city. Of course, we wanted to keep the checks and balances in place between executive and legislative branches. And then finally, keep it legal, which Mark was there for many of our meetings and kept us on track from that perspective with regards to our ideas. So originally, we were tasked with reviewing 5 original proposed charter amendments, and I'll just quickly review those for you. So, 4. So the first charter amendment was to increase the number of council members from 5 to 6, provide the mayor with the ability to break a tie vote amongst council, reorganize the composition of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and expand upon regulations governing the conduct of members of council. We also had an addition to that, which was proposed by Mr. Ventura, which involved reorganizing the powers and duties of council and the mayor as it relates to hiring employees as well. So what I'd like to do is just briefly go through our commission recommendations as it relates to each of those 5 topics. Talk briefly about some of the ideas that we worked on in order to get to those decisions, and then, of course, provide our recommendations. So from the standpoint of increasing the number of council members from 5 members to 6, it's our charter review's recommendation that we keep council at 5 members. This was voted upon very recently and went into effect back in 2014, I believe, from that perspective. So we really felt that it was important to respect the will of the voters being only a few years outside of that time period. Additionally, that odd number also keeps the checks and balances in place with regards to city council and the mayor. The next piece, well, first of all, any questions regarding that recommendation? Okay. The next topic was to provide the mayor with the ability to break a tie vote amongst council. Since we are recommending that we keep council at an odd number, this particular recommendation, it would not be necessary for the mayor to break a tie in that instance. So moving on to reorganizing the composition of the
Question
planning.
about that, Ryan.
Yes.
How is it start to say one of the council members is unavailable? Does the mayor break a tie at that point? So how does it go if the vote was 2-2?
It wouldn't pass.
Okay. I think that we talked about that before. So I just wanted.
Absence is
Be a
no
stalemate.
vote.
Yep.
Absent is a no vote.
An abstention pursuant to our codified ordinance goes with the majority, pursuant to our charter, to our codified ordinances.
The next item was to reorganize the composition of the Planning and Zoning Commission. So our recommendation here is to allow the mayor to be a 6th non-voting member of the Planning and Zoning Commissions. The mayor may vote in this instance in the absence of another member of the Planning or Zoning Commission. And again, this the main thought process behind this is when a business comes into the city, the mayor is typically the first individual that business is going to encounter and or negotiate with. So there may be topics discussed during that meeting that are agreed to, and if the mayor is not a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission, some of that may get lost in translation when that business comes to a planning meeting and asks for something that has to do with signage or Western Reserve style or something to that effect. So allowing the mayor to have a seat on the Planning and Zoning Commission will ensure that any communication gaps that there may be there are locked up and there will be no questions at that point in time. Questions so far? You good?
But
Okay.
it's a non-voting member unless someone is absent.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So is the recommendation then that the mayor actually sit there then at each of the planning commissions?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
all right.
So the last two are the two areas that we probably spent the majority of our time on. So the first one here is to expand upon regulations governing the conduct of members of council. So our recommendation is that we amend 4.13 of the charter to provide council the ability to govern itself through censure and providing consequences to being censured. on a per-term basis for a council member. So and I know Mark had sent an email outlining a couple of different options that we had considered as a review board earlier. So looking at those options, the review board felt that in this instance, censure needed some teeth behind it. So we chose to, and I'll just kind of outline briefly here, and if in the instance where a council member is suspended for the first time, they will be censured for the first time. A council member would be suspended for one regularly scheduled council meeting. They'd receive a loss of pay for up to 1 month, loss of committee chairmanship, membership, and/or loss of seniority. In terms of a second censure, we would then initiate 4.1b, where council shall vote on the question of removal of that individual. If removal is rejected, the council person is then subjected to being suspended for anywhere from 2 to 6 council meetings and a loss of pay for up to 3 months in that instance. And in the event of a third censure, council shall vote on the question of removal from office. So one additional comment that I'd like to make, and I think Mr. Guidetti captured this in his letter, is that he was not 100% sold on the legality of keeping a suspended council member from voting, as at this point, based on the research, there's not case law out there regarding that topic. So from the Charter Review Board's perspective, couple of things. So we considered our city council's position on what goes into a censure. It takes quite a bit to censure one of your own. Some type of behavior unbecoming of a council member or doing something against our city would be required, I would imagine in that case, to censure a council person. What's the goal of a censure? We want to stop the behavior that's going on. And then how would the censured council member be provided due process was another question that we kind of looked at. In our current state, as I mentioned, there's no consequence other than being reprimanded on the stand up here in the event that you are censured, to the individual being censured. The consequences for the city are very great. It stops the progress of the city. So we wanted to give council some guidelines to go off of and some consequences there for the individual being censured. And in looking at the aspect of removing the ability of a censured council person to vote, the Charter Review Board looks at this as, even though there's no case law around that, we would hope that the home rule law in the state of Ohio would be applied to this. And in addition, what's already in the charter is that council members may vote to remove a fellow elected council person already. So we would hope that a court would uphold that in the event that council would rule to vote to suspend one of the other council members as a result of censure. So with all that being said, questions regarding that?
There are 5 council members. If you're censuring one, can you tell everybody what 2/3 would be? 3 people
Correct.
out of the 4. Can you, I don't see it in here, so the question would be, can you censure more than 1 council member at a time?
You'd be able to. It depends on the facts, really. And I'd like to kind of make a note. Charter communities have a little bit more ability in the state of Ohio to come up with creative solutions to problems that they've experienced, either currently or in the past. So I think this was an attempt by the Charter Review Commission to come up with a procedure, clarify a procedure that we don't currently have clarified in our charter for the betterment of the community. The proposal or the recommendation made by the Charter Review Commission, there is not a lot of case law out there, so it's hard to determine how a court would treat it, and that's kind of sort of the point that I made to the Charter Review Commission.
I have a question for you, Mark. Hypothetical, say that we did pass the option 2, and say someone did challenge it in a court of law, business doesn't stop. So all those things that we voted on, would they have to go back and be re-voted on while the process was in the courts to clarify?
if it were passed by council and if it were approved by the voters and it became effective, that charter provision is effective until it's otherwise determined by a court of law.
So you would not have to revisit any legislation that was approved while we have a member under censure? That's the question I think he's
That's
asking.
absolutely, yep.
If you had one under censure while the
Say
court
we
case,
censured someone and they were not
Well,
allowed
that's
to
always
it would
gonna
come.
still be effective.
And then they go to court, do we have to go backwards? Or what was done
There'd
at
be-
that point in time is,
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Until there's a ruling by the court, we still follow our charter, and that censure and whatever penalties that stem
Okay.
therefrom are still in effect. Right.
Unless the court were to make a ruling that it would be retroactive and his ruling
Right.
would go back
Yeah.
prior to.
And there could be injunctive
Yeah.
remedies and things like that too. It depends.
But, you know, that's.
that could take a year or
It
two
could
or
take
three or four.
years,
That's what I'm saying.
years. I mean,
Yeah.
that's an issue that would probably go to the Ohio Supreme Court and maybe the United States Supreme Court.
Who would be able to challenge this, Mark? Would it have to be someone that was censured, or?
The legal answer to that question is anyone with standing. In practice, I don't think I can actually give you an answer, but most likely, yeah, it's the actual person impacted by that decision.
Isn't it mostly said, Mark, that only the person harmed can present
That's
an
what he
appeal
said.
or a grievance?
Correct.
Now we do have a second option that was took into account some the things that we had talked about in our meetings, and basically just kind of removes this suspension of vote that council could also consider. But the recommendation of the committee is to go with the stronger of the two options.
And you're saying that's option 3 on our list. It's
I don't want to
option-
mislead anyone.
It's option 2, but instead of the vote, that's how it would read.
Yes, sir.
It's okay.
So that, 1 is the original, 2 is what we recommend, 3 is, I guess, maybe what Mark kind of recommends.
Recommend without the taking away the vote.
Yes,
Okay.
Okay, good?
it's good.
Okay.
There's more.
Any other
There's more.
questions
So
of the
there's-
Charter Commission?
We've
There's
got one
more.
He's got one more to
Oh,
go.
one more, I'm sorry.
One more.
Trying to rush him out.
So the last piece here is to reorganize the powers and duty of council and the mayor as it relates to the hiring of employees and any promotion of a tested civil service employee. So the Charter Review's recommendation here is we want to provide the mayor with the authority to hire non-department head employees without confirmation from council. And continue to provide the mayor with the authority to hire department heads with a 3 out of 5 vote or confirmation from council. We also want to provide the mayor with the authority to remove any department head without the confirmation of council in that instance. And Mark may be able to speak to this a little bit more, but a terminated department head would have or does have the ability to appeal the termination to council. And in this case, a public meeting would be held hearing the appeal, and in that instance, it would require a 4 out of 5 member vote of council to overturn that termination.
That's right.
Okay.
You know, it's an interesting issue because I was a council member at the time that I recommended that the appointment of a director and removal of a director needed the confirmation of council because I felt at one time that was being abused. So I made that recommendation, went to the voters, and the voters voted in that issue. And then I became mayor, and it came back to bite me. So I have to agree that, unfortunately, if you have a director or somebody that is working in the administration and obviously doesn't have it their oar in the water and rowing in the same direction, that you need to remove that person. I mean, you elect the mayor as the person that you want to administrate your community, and he needs to have people that work under him
Or her.
or her, thank you, moving in a direction that is in the best interest of the community. Now, obviously, if the mayor isn't doing his job, then the voters will take him out of office and you'll get a new mayor. But truly, I have to agree that in hindsight, that I probably made a mistake in making that recommendation many, many, many years ago. So I take the blame for that charter amendment.
And
that
we did
occurred.
discuss removing the approval of council for department heads, but we felt that leaving the approval in there was in the best interest of the whole city. We wanted, there to be some working between the administrative and the legislative in that point, and if there becomes a problem, then it's basically on the mayor to get rid of that person. And council still does have the ability to initiate their own removal of a department head.
Yeah.
What if that's, my question is, do they get an appeal to the mayor if council removes a department head?
No, they do not. So the final arbiter, the way the charter is currently drafted, is council's. The mayor makes a determination, and then if they don't agree with that, they can appeal it to the council. So there wouldn't be an additional layer to the executive.
So the changes basically are, is appointments of a department head still have to have the blessing of council.
Correct.
The removal of a department head does not have to have council blessing, but the employee has the right, the department head has the right to appeal. Today, you may have been seeing over the years that we've had appeals done by non-department head employees. That still sticks. The other thing too is,
Is that a supermajority?
Yes.
To reinstate? Okay.
Correct.
Supermajority to overturn.
To
Not for the-
overturn a mayoral termination, yes.
and the other big part of this is appointments. You see us do a lot of appointments of people within departments, and that would be removed. We would no longer have to vote to appoint, a service worker or a fireman. So there are quite a few changes in here. I've already asked the law department. It's going to be interesting how it goes on the ballot, but I think that the Charter Review Commission really looked at everything possible and really did a good job on this one.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the main points here is that the department head and mayoral recruiting and hiring process will work without interference, while the mayor and council are still involved in the department head process, as we stated. This will help to streamline council work sessions and meetings as well. And then, of course, the employee is still provided with due process in the event that a department head is removed by the mayor. They still have that option to appeal to
One quick
council.
question. You know how we were always doing, the probationary period is over and we have to, will that go away then?
There won't be any need for it. Now,
Okay.
the administration can place that requirement on them. So if the mayor's office decides to make the probationary period effective, then we can still
So
do that.
basically, we won't be doing
It would not
an
come back to
appointment of a
council, though.
police officer and then a year later coming back and saying they're off of probation.
Right.
Okay.
So here's my fear, and I'm going to gear this towards Mark, because I'm reliving a situation, and I think a lot of this was geared towards when we had this problem with a department head in the past. So if a department head is terminated, at that point, they are out of the building and not to be here at all, and if they choose to appeal to council, they can do so, but they are out of this building and not to be in this building, is that correct?
That's correct.
Are they paid?
No.
There is no pay,
Right.
no back pay either. If council
Unless
reinstates, there's no back
some
pay.
contrary understanding, but yeah, that's purely going to be up to the executive were this amendment to go into.
So the mayor would make that call?
Correct.
Okay.
The way I see this entire shift that we're proposing here is we are asking council to, help the mayor approve department heads, and once we have approved the department heads, we leave the approval of all employees underneath that department head to the purview of the mayor and those department heads. We don't know anything more about any employees than any resident does, so we feel that we've confirmed, we feel that council's confirmed the department head, and the department head can make the decisions about staffing.
That's a really strong statement that puts what we are, legislative versus administrative. We hold the checkbook, but we shouldn't be holding who you can hire by a department head. I agree with that.
And you have to remember, and I appreciate that the Charter Commission has looked at this, and don't look at the mayor that's currently in office, or the past mayor, or who may be the future mayor. Think about how the operation works. And that's really what this is all about, because, you know, there can be different mayors in office, there could be different council members sitting up here, and how the city operates into the future.
And I think that's something that we took into account with every discussion. We had basically what we called idiot mayor situation and idiot council situation, and we balanced it through the whole thing. I don't know if that made it into the minutes or not, but that's it.
Yeah, I do have, I know the answer, so maybe you can clarify. When I was speaking with Vinny about it, he said that the people for the police and fire go through a civil service. So there, you know, I guess my question was, you get a mayor to hire his brother, his sister, you know, his second cousin, twice removed. But Vinny assured me that could not happen because of the civil service test and the way that is. Can you just explain that a little bit more? Is anybody?
Yeah, Vinny can explain how
Yeah.
this, so
Mark could explain
Josephine
that.
actually
Well, I-
probably would be the
Well, I
best to
think you
explain.
should go to the law director.
There's still
Yeah.
general
Yeah.
ethics laws that are in place that prevent that kind of activity from happening. And yeah, there's an added layer of review by the Civil Service Commission for hires. So to answer your question, yes, that there would be a mechanism in place to prevent that.
How about for the service department?
General ethics laws would place restrictions on who the mayor could hire, yeah.
Yeah.
But not-
They have to be qualified for the position.
Give me an
That's what it
example of
comes
what you're referencing.
Like say you want to hire your daughter Jennifer for a position to cut the grass
Okay,
in the summer.
okay.
And then we don't get a chance to approve her now because she doesn't come before council.
Well, I
We
think,
do-
you know,
They'd have to be independently qualified for it. So you're,
That's all. I just want to make sure that
But we
down the
also-
line that doesn't happen.
There was
my
a
daughter
time,
doesn't cut grass.
I she sent me an example off the top of my head.
I don't think she would be
Yeah.
but there
qualified.
Yeah,
was,
she's not qualified.
we passed legislation once to specifically
Nina?
stop that, where you
Consider.
cannot be hired and work directly for a relative.
there was a nepotism, anti-nepotism ordinance considered, never passed. That was almost a decade ago, I believe.
But isn't that part of the ethics of the state
Yeah, it
of,
is.
state of
And
Ohio?
The point being, it's almost like if you have someone, you have a piece of equipment that an employee wants to buy. It's not impossible for the employee to do it, but there has to be a bidding process established and give everybody a fair opportunity. The same thing applies with hires. Everybody has to have a fair opportunity and be qualified for the position.
Well,
And,
I
you know,
mean,
when
we
there's
all know in
hires-
this town, if that does happen, everybody would be circling their wagons. And
Right, it
Well,
wouldn't
It
go
would not-
unnoticed.
it would not go a
Specifically-
day without people reminded that that's the mayor's nephew.
It was specifically that you could not hire your own to report, because the discussion was somebody wanted to come back, but they were a relative, and it said as long as they were not coming back to the relative, the council at that point in time said, yeah, they're the most qualified. But it was to really stop nepotism or the question of nepotism.
I presented that.
That is the highest complaint in the Ohio Ethics Commission's
Yeah.
Right.
drawer.
Well, that was my question too. I was just
Yeah.
telling her.
Two-thirds of all complaints to the Ohio Ethics Commission are based on complaints of nepotism.
Yep.
Two-thirds.
And it's not always true, you know, what gets reported. You know, if they're highly qualified and they're not direct reports of the,
And sometimes you have very small communities where the
Yeah.
qualified person happens to be related to
Right.
somebody else that already has a position there. So should the community be harmed by not being able to consider that person? No, they shouldn't be.
Well, I think that you have to have a strong council to make sure that doesn't happen, but
Well, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen because you can have an elected official where, let's assume that, you know, you're on council and a relative of yours gets hired, but you abstain. You now become mayor, and that relative's not working for the city.
right.
So now what do you call that?
They've already been hired.
yeah,
So,
retroactive.
Non-issue
happens.
issue.
Yeah.
It does happen, so I'm just saying, there's that example that will occur or can occur into the future. So, is there any other questions of the charter review?
Is there more that,
Is there more?
We're good.
Just one, sir, one comment. I want to thank you for chairing it, Councilor Brandt, for the time, and the commission, because I know that takes an extraordinary amount of time that you guys gave up to be here to, you know, go over the things that we felt were necessary for the future. So I hope I speak on behalf of council saying thank you, because I know that
Yeah.
that was a lot of time invested, and it's awesome. Thank you.
and I especially want to thank Mrs. Lawyer for doing a tremendous job on those minutes. I know she's got a very busy schedule. It was hard enough to get her to be able to come to meetings, and then she put in the extra time on the minutes. So if anyone has questions about what went on in Charter Review Commission, I guarantee you'll find the answer in those minutes, with not a second missed.
I, as well as many of these issues that you guys are discussing, are things that I felt very strongly about, and I really appreciate your thorough thought and processing of it. And while there are some things that I wish would have been changed, I can't ever disagree with when minds come together and they look at it from a different perspective, that your recommendation is what your recommendation is. So I respect that. I thank you for your time and your service to the city of Macedonia, and Mayor Kukta and others that served on it, Ryan. Thank you very much, Jessica, for your time as well. I know that it was probably a major task in having to meet 10 different meetings.
10 weeks in a row.
10 weeks in a row to get this done, but we really appreciate it, because it was really a service to your residents of your community. We saw the problems that occurred in the past, and I think hopefully this charter amendment, or these charter amendments, will certainly correct those problems into the future. What we never want to see our community ever face again is a gridlock by council against the administration. That is not how you operate a city. We don't need gridlock in our community. We're a very small community. We're all family. We're friends. We're here to do what's in the best interest of our community. And the example that was demonstrated in the past was just an embarrassment to our community. And we don't want to see that ever occur again. So, and I know that Mayor Kukta had to be a part of that, unfortunately, and his hands were tied. And you know, the people of our community saw that there needed to be a cure to the situation, and they obviously spoke out at the last election. So,
Mr. Zarcisi, when are these amendments available? Are they available currently, or do we have to wait until the 12th before the next council meeting?
I'm not following your question.
They're available as soon
Available.
as you amend the ordinance and include.
When would they be available for the public to review?
Are you talking about the ones that are tabled?
The ones that, this one that just came out, 66,
Oh, as soon
and-
as, I'll post it. It'll be available as soon as you act upon it.
and the ones that are, so as soon as we act on it, the amended versions will be available.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to
I'm
let.
sorry, I wasn't following what
I
you were saying.
understand. I was thinking it. I had to put it out there.
okay, thank you very much, Ryan.
Thank you for your time.
And thank you,
Thank
the Charter
you.
Commission.
Thanks, guys.
And we're going to move
I'll
on with
miss
our
you.
meeting at this time, so thank you. Okay, we obviously are going to move on at this point, and we're going to deal with pending legislation. The first item is ordinance number 40, 2018.
Mayor, I offer 40, 2018 for its third reading by title only.
Thought we were going to do a motion to conform.
We're not there yet, Mr. Goki.
No, sorry.
Not there yet. An ordinance amending Chapter 1135 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Macedonia regarding the Board of Zoning and Building Code Appeals.
Okay, you've heard the reading?
Mayor, I would like to make a motion to amend Exhibit A to conform to the most recent version distributed by the Law Department.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second, to amend per the new version of this amendment, obviously. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion's carried. Do we have a motion to adopt?
Mayor, I move to adopt ordinance 40, 2018, and post the same according to law.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Motion and a second. Are there any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion's carried, and thank you. Next items are motions and other legislative actions.
There's another.
Oh, is there another one on here that I
Yes,
don't
sir.
see? I'm sorry.
I move to waive the 48-hour rule of council with regards to ordinance number 66, 2018.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion's carried.
I move to offer ordinance number 66, 2018 for its first reading by title only.
An ordinance providing for the submission to the electors of the City of Macedonia a proposed amendment to various sections of the charter relative to council consideration of executive action.
Okay, thank you. And we have, obviously, this doesn't need to be totally approved by council until that August 9th meeting or before August 9th. So
It has to be filed, sir, by August 8th.
by August 8th, I'm sorry.
Filed with the Board of
Okay,
Elections.
thank you. All right. Okay. Is there any other legislative actions that need, or motions by council? Okay, hearing none. Correspondence, are there any correspondence?
I
Justin?
do.
You do. Okay.
I do. This is to Chief Black. Good morning. Last evening, my husband became unresponsive while at Casa D'Angelo. We called 911 immediately, and all the men who arrived were wonderful. They transported my husband to Akron General and Stowe. I just wanted to pass along a big thank you. It was a terrifying experience for my daughter and myself, and everyone who presented themselves were friendly and calm. They treated us so nicely. You always hope you will never have to be in this situation, but when you are, to have such professional and kind help is very appreciated. I can only imagine some situations that do not have a positive outcome. Thankfully, ours was mild in comparison. Nonetheless, it was traumatic for us. It takes very special people to do the kind of work that they do. Thank you again for your kindness. My husband is doing well. Ann Swarbre.
What was his name? You're having difficulty with that?
S-B-O-R-A-Y. Do I not pronounce the S? Bore?
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Borat.
And this is to Chief Golden. Good afternoon, Chief Golden. I'm emailing to thank Officer Rick for his help with my 92-year-old World War II veteran father. Today, my father was driving to my home in Northfield Center and got stuck in Northfield, North Bedford Road. By the time I got there, Officer Rick had already called AAA and, more importantly, was patient and calming with my father. Rick stayed with us until my father's car was out and he was on his way. Please extend our warmest thanks to him and let him know that my family are very grateful. Daniel Kuchis of Old Date Road. With two nice no-goods.
Great. Any other correspondence? No?
No, sir.
Okay. Moving on to Mayor's report. We had a Finance Committee meeting yesterday, and obviously many things were discussed. Committee Chairman, Councilman Bilkey brought to the table a good agenda of items to be discussed. But, you know, the bottom line is that this city has to make a decision. You know, we are anticipating about a $35,000 carryover in the capital improvement fund for 2019. When I took office in 1988, I'm dating back so far, I had a capital improvement budget of $50,000, okay? And I asked myself at that time, what am I going to do? $50,000, what are you going to do in a city that I made all these promises and said I'm going to do all these things in this community, and I have $50,000? It was just terrible. So I'm going back in time, and I'm saying to you as residents of this community that even back then, and I had served on council for obviously many years before I became mayor, we were always begging from Peter to pay Paul. This community always suffered not having enough dollars to maintain itself. And, you know, I think councils from the past never wanted to raise real estate taxes. They kind of shied away from real estate taxes, so they really only focused on the income taxes that the city was receiving. But at that time, too, you got to remember there were other income streams that were coming into the city. You know, we were receiving inheritance taxes back in those days. We were receiving tangible taxes back in those days. We were getting royalties from gas wells and oil wells and other things that were occurring. And our local government fund was coming in from the state, which was fairly healthy at the time. And so our budget was pretty good. So, I mean, as time went on and our community continued to grow, and industry continued to locate here and commercial growth, we were enjoying a nice stream of revenue for our community. But unfortunately, tangible tax went away, inheritance tax went away. Our local government fund has now been taken away from our community, which has been $650,000 annually. And for the last 7 years, you can add that up and see how much money we have lost. And our economy has kind of changed. And what's going on in our economy, and I kind of tried to analyze this, is that, and being a large commercial property owner with a lot of retail space myself and office buildings, or office building in Macedonia at least, I see there's a major change in what's going on. There's not a need, obviously, for people to have office space like they used to have, because they can operate out of Paneras or wherever, and I've stated this before. Retail, you can get on the internet today and you can order just about anything on Amazon or Google or whatever the case is, and you can have it in a day or two and you don't have to go shopping. So that's taken away from the retail component that we've had out there in our community. So you're seeing this transition now of what used to be a major hub retail center now becoming more of a service-related center, where we're getting, obviously, an express clinic, which is Cleveland Clinic, and taking 8,000 square foot of great retail space, and because that's a service-related type of business that can provide services to our residents and others that are coming into the community. But the retail component is really falling to the wayside. And that's had a great impact, by the way, on our income tax. Our income tax, obviously, is based on a payroll and based on a profit tax. So if your major retailers in your community are not bringing in sufficient dollars because they're not making the sales, that has an impact then on the bottom line of the city's revenue stream. And we in this city have, and this council, have worked very, very hard to maintain a very stringent budget. And along with our finance director, we are under budget right now. We maintain a strong a budget in the past couple of years that I've been mayor. We have not had an extravagant amount of dollars to spend for capital improvements. And we're just trying to make ends meet. But the reality is, folks, and the residents of this community, obviously we had just put this issue on the ballot for a 0.25% additional increase, and it was voted down by 87 votes. 87 votes could have swung it the other way. But the reality is that we are in a position right now where we are in need of dollars. If we in this community want to maintain the type of services that we have been providing our residents, police and fire, service department, we need to step up to the plate. We need to get our residents to support going back to the ballot and supporting a 0.25% increase. if we don't do that, folks, our city will start to falter. You know, I today got through, I think it was I think it was either Cranes or one of these, there was a statistical information that was put out about all the communities in Northeast Ohio. And Macedonia, by the way, and I have to read this to you because it's really interesting. The lowest property taxes, and they're listing 15 communities. Macedonia is the third lowest out of 15 communities, and I'll just name them for you. There was Brunswick, which was $1,740 per 100,000. Streetsboro, $1,740. Macedonia is $1,790. And then it continues to go down, you know, Hinckley, Chester Township, Twinsburg, $1,890. Medina, $1,910. Now these are per $100,000. So we, real estate wise, are at the bottom. We pay the least amount of money throughout Northeast Ohio. There's no question about that. We're proud of that. We're proud to say that we're one of the lowest real estate taxing districts in the area. So therefore, if we're going to keep our real estate taxes down, we need another source of revenue. And the only other source of revenue is obviously our payroll and our profit tax. So we need our residents to support the idea of going for another 0.25%. We were only 87 votes away, and I know there was a lot of confusion in our community. A lot of people didn't realize they could get a refund from the 0.25% that was passed for roads last year. I talked to a lot of people at the polls. I stood out there and I was amazed to hear people say to me, you know, they had not read anything about this 0.25% that was being presented, and yet they were going to the polls and basically they were voting against it. I mean, I talked to the lieutenant over there, Yakupovich, and he had indicated that he talked to a neighbor that was behind him who you would think had some real knowledge of the city, has lived here a long time, but yet he said, you know, I'm not voting for that until Vince told him about the facts of what's going on, and he said, oh, well, he was kind of surprised. So, you know, when you think people are acknowledging and realizing what the situation is from the city, we sit here, we're like so close to the forest we can't see the trees, okay? And our residents who have busy days, trying to make a living, have kids and everything else, they do not see what it is that we see day in and day out. And for us to get the word out there, it's very difficult to communicate to everyone what the situation is. I don't want to pay any more taxes, folks. And I don't think anybody else wants to. But if you want good services for your community, you got to step up to the plate and offer to support your community. Back in the 60s, as late as the 60s, we haven't really increased our real estate taxes. And we are the third lowest. So, you know, we need to do something. I want to, as a mayor, I want to continue to maintain good services for our community. We're running right now in our service department with 14 service employees. We have so much work in the city. It's unbelievable how much work we have to do. You know, I said this before and I'll say it again because you got to continue to reiterate the same thing every time. I left office in 2001. I had 14 administrative employees. I came back in 2015, and we still had 14 administrative employees. Okay, so it wasn't that the city grew. We stayed and maintained what we had. Okay, so government is not growing through this administration or any past administration. It's kind of been maintained. So I know that people out there look at government and say, yeah, just waste of spending. Yep, give them more money and they'll spend more money. That's not the case in our city. we are very efficient in what we spend. Now, this council has to make a decision. And we had a finance committee yesterday. And we have to make a decision on, in my opinion, what do we do next? Do we put the 1 mil levy, a renewal levy for the fire, back on in November? Do we present a 1/4% back to the voters in November? Do we take away a part of the credit, which is 100% that we offer in our community? Or do we put a real estate tax increase on? Or do we do nothing? My position is that I think that this council needs to immediately take away a part of the credit so that this city can continue to move forward and pay its bills and keep the operations at parity with what's going on around us. That's the immediate. Take away the credit and move forward. I don't want residents to think that we offered this 1/4% and that we were lying to them that there was not an immediate need. There's definitely an immediate need, and we need to move forward on that right now. Okay? So I'm going to be asking this council to do that. Now, should the 1/4% pass in November, then council can rescind the credit and go back to 100%. But I think that that's something that we need to do. And, you know, I'm not up here standing here before you and saying to you that I love to see increases in taxes. But the reality is that the city has become stagnant. We can't move. We can't do anything. We are at a skeleton operation. And I know that we've been this way for years. It's been this way. I can remember back in the 80s and the 70s. You know, the city has kind of matured itself over years, but we have always had to fight to get enough money to pave our roads and to do the capital improvements. I've been talking about building a new service garage since the 80s. And we still haven't built a service garage. You know? Thank God we were able to build this building, and thank God we were able to put the rec center up, and thank God we were able to build and put things together. But we got a building in the service department that's sitting there is ready to fall over. The metal building and rusting away. Do we need to consolidate the 3 locations that we have? Yes, we do. Okay? And those are some of the problems that, you know, I'm mayor today, but the next mayor is going to wind up having to face with this problem into the future. As a businessman in this community, I'm willing to stand up and give more money to my community. As a resident of this community for over 40 years, I'm willing to give more money to this community because I know that it's needed. I live here, my family lives here, my friends live here, all of the residents that supported me as mayor live here, and they want good services. They want to pick up the phone and call 911 and get a police officer at their home and get an EMS squad at their home or a fire truck at their home. When they do that, they get it. You know, it's important that we can maintain those types of services at that level. You know, we don't want to become communities that many of the people who live here today ran from. We don't want to be that. We want to be better than that. And that's where we could be if people do not support this system. I said it yesterday, and I'm hoping Ken Larmer over here from the News Leader doesn't report what I said yesterday about, unfortunately, I have to say it again, is that unfortunately I as a resident and others have been spoiled in this community. Spoiled because they have enjoyed the great services of this community and they have not had to pay for it. I am telling the honest truth, you know, and I have nothing to gain or lose by what I say today, but tell the truth. with that, I'm going to move on to the next issue, but I'm very passionate about what I'm saying right now, and I would encourage this council to really think about taking the credit away, because it's absolutely necessary, at least a portion of that credit, going to the ballot in November, and then moving on from there, and hoping that the residents of this community will rally together and support that issue. Everybody who's raising a family in this community are faced with wanting to live in a community that the values will appreciate and things will get better in our community. So, I'm very happy to announce that Macedonia is now going to be hosting, on behalf of the of Northfield Center, Sagamore, and Northfield Village. They are joining Macedonia in our senior program. Each of those communities are joining Macedonia, and we'll have our senior luncheon downstairs. We're expanding it from 2 days a week now to 3 days a week. We'll be serving somewhere in the neighborhood of about 160 meals per week. That means 160 seniors will be coming in for meals. Each of the 3 communities, by way of joining with Macedonia, will each be paying $3,500 each to join into the Macedonia program. We do have a application in right now to the area aging, where last year they gave us $12,000. We're asking for $21,000. The meals to our seniors, by the way, on Mondays and Fridays is $4. That's all they pay for their lunch. On Wednesdays, they're going to pay only $3. And on Fridays, they get bingo. So that's a good thing. On Mondays and Wednesdays, there are obviously other entertaining type of things that they can do. We now have put a fax machine downstairs into the recreation area that they have, where the pool tables are and lounge area, and they absolutely think that's the best thing in the world, is having a copy machine down there. So I'm excited that they're happy about that. So any senior that's out there that wants to come to the program, they certainly should come. I mean, there's entertainment, there's other things that they've done, medical testing, they come in and do healthcare type of situations, and we're really excited about having now 160 seniors that will be joining us weekly for meals, and they should take definitely advantage of that. And I want to thank the mayor of Northfield Village, Jesse Nihas. I want to thank the trustees of Sagamore, Paul Schweikert and Dave and John. Yeah, you know, for whatever reason, I never remember John's name. And I want to thank the trustees, obviously, all 3 of them from Northfield Center, Paul Busher and Rich Ravel and Mazzola. They all 3 unanimously voted to join Macedonia senior program. And this was something, by the way, that we talked about, I think about 1.5 years ago. And at that time, they were unsure whether or not the church was going to close. And we're excited that they're coming here now, because it just enhances our program altogether. So, I want to talk a little bit about Longwood Park, and I want to talk about, and I know that, you know, Jessica came to me, and Karen has some concerns being on the recreation board, and I want to bring some historical approach to what occurred in the past and how our park became our park, and things that we were doing there. And Jan can remember this, because Jan was obviously a part of council at the time, and she was a major proponent for the soccer fields, by the way. In fact, she pushed me very hard, if I think back in time. But we developed, obviously, the ball diamonds and ball fields and the score tower and all that. And many of you may not know this, but we called on, back then in those days, we called on Bart Wolstein, who then at that time owned or was building the Commons, and he was trying to get his naming rights, if you will, to the Cleveland Browns. And I called him up on the phone and I said, "Hey, Bart," I said, "I know that you can't get the naming rights to the Cleveland Browns, but I'm going to give you an opportunity to come to Macedonia and put your name on some ball diamonds over here." And he laughed on the phone to me, and I said, "Yeah, I need some money." He says, "How much do you need?" I said, "Well, as much as you can give me." Next thing I know, he came out and gave me a check for $100,000. And that's how we built those 4 ball diamonds and the score tower back then. Okay? And at the time, we had a plan. And the plan incorporated as well the fact that we built a 3-acre lake there, which didn't cost the city 1 penny. We built that 3-acre lake. And again, that was because Bart Wolstein, who needed dirt for the Commons, and we, the city, needed to build a lake, he came and built the lake. We wound up with a 3-acre beautiful lake, and he wound up with the dirt, and we were as happy as can be. So, as we developed the 4 ball diamonds, the lake, and all that, which we were putting in at the time, we also provided for soccer fields. We were building the 4 ball diamonds, and behind those 4 ball fields to the east, or actually to the west, up against the Parkview subdivision, there were 4 ball diamonds or 4 soccer fields that were to be built. Unfortunately, they only started to utilize 2. But we then came back and we graded out that entire area, which would then have gone to the south, which would have provided 2 more up against where the new parking lot is. So right currently, today, we only have 2. But I've instructed and asked or requested that the service department go out there and let's get that other area readied so that we can put 2 more soccer fields in on the further southern end of the ball diamonds. When we created the oval, which was over by Longwood Park, the anticipation was that that would be then the annual venue for any and other events that we were having in the community. You know, whether it was the Fun Fest at the time, or whether it was flea market or garage sales or what have you, we were going to build this oval. And at the time, the only thing that we could possibly do is do the outer ring, which we did. We put in the gravel all the way around, and we didn't have the gravel or the funds to totally make it a hard surface. In fact, the first year that we had the Fun Fest, just to tell you, it was not called the Fun Fest, it was called the Mud Fest, if you remember. It was called the Mud Fest because we, at that time, as we were developing this area, we had a major a rainstorm that came in, and the entire area was just mud, and people had to walk through the mud, and it kind of got that unfortunate connotation about it, that it was the Mud Fest. But we wanted to always hard surface it. And when you think about, you know, we have the manor house there now. We also always need additional parking into the park. When we take and have the Fun Fest and we lay it out next to the rec center, we inconvenience all our residents. We take away the parking. There's no place for them to park. They have to go park in the back gravel parking lot by the ball diamonds. And this area here, back in the day, was to be, as I said, a hard surface, and that was a part of a plan. As mayor coming back, I am just carrying out the plan that I wasn't able to complete when I was mayor, or when I left in 2001. Nobody ever carried out that plan. We have the great opportunity right now because we're taking all of the grindings from the Ledge Road project as well as our own grindings from the city, and we're bringing them up to the park right now so that we can complete that area. So I hope that if you look at some plans, by the way, and you need to look, I don't know, Jessica, I didn't have them at the time you and I met, but there are plans that absolutely show where the soccer fields were to be developed. So, and I'd be happy to share those with you, Karen, and the Parks and Recs Commission. It was not meant for me to, and I know there was concerns about the Parks and Recs Commission about taking away a soccer field, and it was not meant to take away a soccer field, but it was meant to enhance. And by the way, when that plan was presented, and something else that I just remembered, across the street where the Two Club Golf or Windmill Lake Golf Course is now, those soccer fields were not even on the plan. And we have, how many do we have on that side, Angela?
3.
3. So we now have 3 over there that we never even anticipated on using. So that is more of an enhancement for the soccer. So with that, I just wanted to make that explanation. I hope it clears up where we were and where we're going and what we're trying to do.
One of the things, can I add to that, Mayor?
Sure.
One of the things that we were concerned about is would there be enough grindings to finish it, and also if we didn't want to take away the ability to use grindings on paths in the woods and paths around the park, and the mayor assured me that there would be plenty to add those hard surfaces like around the lake, to fix the paths in the woods, to add to the paths on the eastern side of the woods, and to possibly put more bike and hard surface trails on the outside of the woods within the park. So
We're getting a lot of grindings in, and you can obviously see the stockpiles that are coming in. And that's just, I think they're coming in almost every day, aren't they? Or just about.
Well, it's Pierre, what's there right now, we've had there for some time, but we haven't received ledge road grindings yet.
Okay.
Which will be abundant.
I'll be abundant.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So, yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. What else do I have to say? I wanted to talk about the progress on the rec center and the locker rooms and the restrooms. We are moving very fast. We're getting up the men's and women's locker rooms at the rec center. We finally got the stone on the walls. The walls are starting to come up. I got some brick going up as well at this time. We're going to start scaffolding. I think we're scheduled to have the top on it probably in the next couple weeks.
Weather permitting, hoping.
Yeah, we're
Run smooth,
hoping
yeah.
for that. But we're doing so well, and I have to say we're really under budget on this thing by major dollars. We're really, and I applaud all of our administrative assistants and John and Angela and we got Jason Check over there and Ronnie Frerum that are working with Manny, and we're doing much of this in-house, and we're trying to bring this project in as cheap as we possibly can and save as much as we possibly can and give the residents of our community the biggest bang for their buck, and we're doing that, and we're working very hard at that. And I spend a lot of time going up there and meeting and talking and making sure that we're directing the work in the proper way, and we're getting there. So we have meetings almost every day about this quote or what do we have to do here, and we're getting it done. So I appreciate everybody's effort in that area. The road program, I know that Joe couldn't be here tonight, and he sent me something, and I just got to read what he sent me. Where's it at? This is from our city engineer, and I just wanted to read it at this point. He says you have a total of 33 streets are currently under contract to be paved as a part of the 2018 road program. Through a competitive public bidding process, Specialized Construction has been awarded the paving contract. These roads, construction is taking place concurrently on many roads. As such, some roads are in different stages of reconstruction than others, and there are some roads in which the work has not yet begun. So I wanted to mention what he would say about that. And the water main improvements are scheduled for both roads in 2018. That's Shepherd Hills Boulevard and Robin Lane water main. So that's going to happen soon. And that, I believe, went to Cat's Construction, if I'm correct on that.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah. So, yeah, and I just have to apologize to everybody for the inconveniences that they're having both on Ledge Road and all the other roads in our city. I knew this was going to be a major year for us to repave, and the inconveniences that we're experiencing, but, you know, when it's all said and done and those roads are nice and smooth and you're not bottoming out your cars anymore and you're not blowing out tires or rims or what have you, you're going to be very happy that the city was able to do at least $10 million of roads as we have done. Probably the last item I want to talk about, and today Rhonda and I met with the Stifel.
Stifel and Nichols. Stiefel and Nichols.
Yeah, I can never say their name, but it's kind of a funny name to pronounce, I guess. But we were working on our rating for our city, our bond rating. And, you know, we're a AA3 right now.
Correct.
Okay, and, you know, that's not the best, but it's not the worst. It's like right there. So when I talk about the AA3 rating, it has a lot to do with how much the city has in its coffers. And well, let me explain this to you. When the city goes out, for instance, to buy bonds for $10 million of roads that we're doing, our rating, if we have a better rating than a AA3, means significantly a difference of what we will pay by way of interest. So let's assume we lock into an interest rate of 4% today because our rating is at AA3. If we would have had a AA rating of 1, we may be locking it at 3.5%. That's just an assumption. I don't know what that number would exactly be, but it could be a variation of that amount. So the more money that the city has available to itself and the more support of its community, like, you know, Beechwood, who has in their coffers and their reserve funds of $50 million, their rating, they're at the top of the rating. They're one of the best rated areas in Northeast Ohio. You know, there's many other communities that are much better rated than we are. But that means a lot because it affects just about everything. So if you don't have your system fed with money and support by your community, it affects your ratings, which is rated by Moody's out of New York. That then affects what you pay on your bond rates and your interest rates. So there's a ripple effect when a community doesn't support its community. So I know that people are sometimes thin, but when they think about it, you know, if you don't support these things, then what happens over here? And what happens through the chain of the system? And that's exactly why we were meeting today, because we were trying to get a better bond rating. In fact, what is the date that we are going to be in front of Moody's?
End of June.
In
Oh,
June,
the week
yeah.
of June
So
6th.
I have to put a presentation on before Moody's to try to encourage them to lessen our rate. So I got to talk about our community and how supportive our community is and how our residents support, you know, the operations of the city so that we can try to get a better rating. So there is an effect by the fact that the people aren't supporting like this 0.25%. If this thing would have passed, it would have been a slam dunk that we could have gotten down to probably a AA1 or something, or maybe a AA2. But it would have had enough, it has a definite effect on that interest rate that we're going to pay. So don't think that, you know, that what I'm about to do in meeting with them and what the city's going to pay isn't really coming out of their pocket, because it is. So one way or another, the residents are paying for it. That's essentially the bottom line. You know, you don't see it because it's, you know, people don't focus on it, but that's the reality. So I just needed to emphasize that. And I'll let you know in June how our outcome of talking with Moody is, but I'm hoping that we can bring that rate down. So with that, I'm going to move on to committee reports. Do we have any committee reports?
Yeah, last night we met as a financial committee. I kind of forgot what I was going to say. So we put everything that we have moving forward on the table, including some of the amenities that the city currently enjoys. As the mayor spelled out, we have 5 options that we can see moving forward, and we're going to examine each one and come back with recommendations on the June 7th meeting. And that will be probably the best one to attend if you want to hear about the city finances. We're going to tear it apart and put it back together and hopefully come out with the consensus. So June 7th at 6:30 is our next meeting.
Okay. Any other committee reports? Okay, hearing no others, then we'll move on to department reports. John?
No report, Mayor. Have a good Memorial weekend.
Great. Angela?
I can't echo that. The Spirit of Macedonia Fun Fest is coming up very quickly, June 7th through the 10th. That's a Thursday through Sunday. We have a lot of activities planned. Thursday we have a classic car cruise-in. Friday we have our annual 5K race that benefits the Humane Society of Summit County. Saturday is our big night with fireworks. We have entertainment, rides, food, all kinds of things, community booths to visit all 4 days.
Get that dunking booth yet?
Pardon me?
Did you get that dunking booth yet?
No. So we invite people to come out and enjoy the event. It is free admission, free parking. We are currently selling pre-sale wristbands for all-day ride. What am I trying to say? Pre-sale wristbands that will allow your children to ride. The ride's unlimited per day. So those are discounted at $15 at the rec center through June 6th, which is the day before the event starts. If anyone has any questions, they can call the rec center or visit macrec.com or follow us on Facebook. We have plenty of updates and announcements with all of the events and everything that's going on during that time. And that's all I have.
Thank you.
How'd the equipment sale go?
The cardio equipment auction, online auction, ended last night, and after what we netted about $4,500, I think it was.
So everything sold?
Everything sold.
Or everything was bid on, so now it just has to be. Were they paid for right away on Gov Deals, or they pay when they pick up, or?
Not all of them. They all.
There's
have to
different
pay-
ways?
Yeah,
Okay.
they pay by credit card online, and then we have pickup dates beginning tomorrow through Sunday.
And what's the situation with the weight room? There's gonna be closure, right?
The weight room will be closed next week for 2 days, May 30th and 31st, potentially going into June 1st, but we don't think so. The 30th is so that we have time for employees, personnel to move all of the current weight room equipment out of that space.
You can do that instead.
And make room for the new equipment that's being delivered. So all of the new equipment is coming on the 31st and will be
Okay.
installed that day. It will be an all-day project.
Awesome. So we can look forward to working out even
Yes.
better on the 2nd?
Yes, and then all of the weight room equipment that we're moving out will then go up online for auction as well.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay. Rhonda?
Just a quick update on the Rita situation. For the month of May, we received $1,202,000, which is up $152,213 from last year. We're up $460,435 as compared to last year, but really where we should be, we're still short about $25,000 from where we really should be. As far
Is that
as
the projected number, 25?
right, based on last year we're at 2%. This year we should be at 2.25%, so we're still a little short. We've received 464 refund requests. We have processed 382 of them for a total of $47,394.31. Some don't, some of the individuals are not eligible. Some we're still waiting for Rita to finalize the tax returns still. And we've received 2 donations thus far, one for the Park Fund and one for Veterans Memorial. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Tim?
No report, Mayor.
Vince?
No report, Mayor.
Thank you. Mark?
No report, sir.
Motion to adjourn.
All those in favor, indicate by saying aye. Aye. Good night, everyone. Thank you for being here. Appreciate your participation.